Welcome in to the Play-by-Play, a sports media talk show brought to you by Awful Announcing, where, unlike Jonathan Gannon, we would have gone for two last night. He is Brendan Clean. He is a staff writer at Awful Announcing. I am Ben Axelrod, a senior editor at Awful Announcing. On today's show, we're going to talk about Netflix's latest deal with Major League Baseball. We are going to talk about Kyle Lowry joining Amazon's NBA coverage. But Brendan, we're going to start with your hometown here, the Phoenix area. We're going to talk about the Arizona Cardinals and specifically their performance on Thursday Night Football. We're not going to talk about their performance specifically.
We're not even talking media today. We're just an NFL show.
Yeah, well, I mean, Gannon should have gone for two, right?
To be honest, it didn't hit me until the game ended. I was,
Really?
I was just in it. Obviously, the comeback was crazy, and I was just like saying a prayer that Marvin Harrison's career didn't end on the field last night when he caught the touchdown. So then they win. The field goal goes through the uprights, and I was like, shit, should they have gone for two on that? And that's literally the first time I thought about it. And yeah, maybe, probably, but also to even be in that position, like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. They lost that game 75 different times, so it's almost hard for me to even be like, well, they would have won in that game. Like, everything in the world was saying they were going to lose. So like the gods, everything went the way it should have.
Yeah, I was on Seahawks -1.5. So I was very much thinking about the possibility of the Cardinals going for two, missing it, and the Seahawks winning by one, because that's usually how that plays out when I lay a wager. So it was definitely top of mind for me. But I also think, like, with these new kickoff rules and everything, like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, you still only would have been up one with a short field to kick a game-losing field goal anyway. So maybe it adds a little bit more pressure to Sam Darnold, which is never a bad thing.
We got to do a stock watch at some point about these kickoffs, because I'm tired of it. Last night was, I'm officially done. It just feels like every game is significantly affected by some element of what's going to happen with the kickoffs in a way that, like, way overtakes when dudes were just running straight into a concussion wall like they were trying to get rid of. Like, we've gone full circle, and now they're too much of a part of the game. So anyway, we could do a half hour on what I watched in Glendale last night, but we should talk about the folks from Amazon who were in Glendale last night.
Yeah, well, let's do that, because I think one of the sports media storylines that has kind of emerged this season, just about a little less than a month in here, is Amazon's NFL coverage. I don't know where you stand on it. I don't know if you're like Bill Simmons and you just keep an official rankings of everything in your back pocket the way he does with NBA players. I think Amazon right now has the best presentation of NFL games. I do think they have some built-in advantages, which is something I want to get to. But I think when you look at their studio show, which is always on site and obviously always feels like a big deal when they're on town. Ironically, their broadcast team of the national broadcast is probably my least favorite, but I still think it's passable. And then just everything they've done with the technology.
Like it? Hold on. You like it less than Brady Burkhart?
It's like those are the two that I'm like wrestling with for the bottom spot. Okay. And
fair enough.
I admittedly haven't watched a lot of Brady this season yet. It hasn't fallen into my purview, which is something I wrote about for Awful Announcing, about how he's just become another broadcaster, which is kind of bizarre. But yeah, there's something weird about Kirk Herbstreit doing NFL, and I'm just never going to be able to get past that, I think. And Al Michaels is what he is at this point, but he does seem a little bit rejuvenated. But I want to talk about the Blitz indicator, which you didn't see while you were at the game last night. But what are your kind of overall thoughts on Amazon's NFL presentation?
Yeah, it's funny. We were trying to map out the show today, and I was like, I kind of just threw it out there. And obviously every Friday morning you could log on and have something to say about Thursday Night Football if you're in sports media, and I wasn't sure if you would bite on it, because I thought I was just having my own kind of come to Jesus moment with it a little bit this year, maybe just catching up or taking a liking to it on my own. And then you were like, yeah, I think it's amazing. Let's talk about it. The studio show's great, and on down the line. And it was like, okay, I guess maybe this is consensus or something closer to it. I think, Al Michaels is Al Michaels. I've really come around on Kirk this year, just in terms of like he is totally above the Mendoza line. Like he delivers a good, capable broadcast, tells you what's happening and why, keeps it moving. Just great at TV, great at being a color commentator, even if it is not the incisive, experience-based stuff that you might get from Aikman or even Brady or Romo or something. I just think he does a solid job. But yeah, I think you're right that it's some of the other Amazon-specific stuff that really takes it from that to where it may be headed, where I think they're nailing Thursdays. The viewership has continued to go up. The NFL gives them better and better games every year, and they have the playoffs now. And okay, where are they gonna get next package, right? Like how much more of a destination for NFL games is Amazon about to be? But it's the studio. The bets they made on the young guys that they went for are working, and it's the tech. And that kind of leads us to the next topic. So I'll eventually transition us and reference this again, but that the tech and the interface of just like tuning into and watching a game is kind of the identity that they're building for all of their sports properties. But I think like I get excited about it because of how well it's worked on the NFL. So, all these newcomers, streaming people the past few years in sports, they kind of roll out their vision and you're like, okay, yeah, great. You deliver packages to my doorstep. Of course, you're going to tell me you're going to revolutionize everything having to do with watching football. I'll believe it when I see it. And now we're a few years into this and I'm like, okay, like you guys sort of proved yourselves right. And I'm kind of in.
Yeah, it's funny because when it first went to Amazon and you're trying to figure out the pieces of like, okay, like what is the tech part of this? How is a broadcast on Amazon different? And like the big thing people would always reference, and I don't even know if it was them touting it, but it was like this idea that like you could be watching a game and also purchase your favorite player's jersey from the screen. And it's like, okay, that's not really filling a need. Like, and that's not even like something like I could go on my phone and go on Fanatics every bit as easily. That's not really, it's not even convenient. It's just like tech for tech's sake. But I think this year, and what really got me revved up on wanting to talk about this was John Orrand at Puck had Charlie Nyman. He's the Amazon's head of sports partnerships on his podcast, The Varsity, earlier this week. And it was a much more wide-ranging conversation, but a big part of it was talking about this new technology that they've implemented this season. I first really took note of it with I think it was the week 2 game between the Packers and the Commanders because Micah Parsons was playing in it. But they have this new technology where before every play, they identify who's the likeliest defender to blitz. And it looks like Madden or college football where there's literally like a user circle over a certain player. And I highly, for anybody who's like interested in this stuff, I highly recommend that podcast because Charlie Nyman was talking about the technology they use, the AI they have used to figure out how to identify that player. And it's based on tendencies. It's based on where players are lining up. It's based on how they're moving. And then the other interesting thing about it is, okay, well, it doesn't bat 100%. It sounds like somewhere in the 80s, but the 20% that it doesn't hit is every bit as interesting because it shows you how they're disguising their blitzes and how they're doing it. Yep. And that's the kind of like, are you an X's
or the offense? Or the offense kind of picks it up, right? In a way that, even the defensive coordinator probably wasn't expecting. It kind of, it's like a sneak peek into what should happen in a way that doesn't feel like it's over the top, distracting or like
it's not invasive.
Kind of like what you were saying, just for the sake of doing it, like, but it definitely adds something. I honestly am like, I think we've covered this over time doing the show together. I'm much less of a football guy than I used to be in general. And I think that's partially because my teams have just sucked the past few years in college and the NFL, although,
you got a playoff
ASU's been rallying the past couple of years. Yeah, for sure. But anyway, yeah. So like, I'm not necessarily like I wouldn't call myself I'm consuming all the Nate Tice content I can get or
Yeah.
anything. But I'm at least this kind of gets me into it. And you're seeing like the thing about it too is there's duplicates and imitators now popping up where I think you're seeing similar things on other broadcasts, and it feels like this is something we could look back on as like the score bug, the
yellow line,
K-zone, the yellow line. And then Amazon did this, and then that was just how NFL broadcasts looked forever.
I find it to be such an enjoyable part of the broadcast, and I'm like I probably like football more, and I'm very into football, but I'm not an X's and O's guy, and I never pretend to be, and I don't know what I'm watching every time I'm watching football. But this like feels like I know what I'm watching now. This feels like I can, and they said Ryan Fitzpatrick, who I want to get into too. They said he played a key role in helping develop this, because they asked him like, hey, like as a quarterback, like what is some technology that would translate to the screen? And he said the big thing is obviously identifying who's blitzing. And so when you add that element, it really does help you kind of key in on like what you're looking at as the play develops. And so I find that very interesting. And I agree. I think it's something that's going to be on, like, I think this will be a point we look back on, and it's on every broadcast. It started here.
Let's get to the studio, but I just have to ask, since I, again, was at the game last night, I'm assuming on many Cardinals offensive snaps, every Seahawk was colored as somebody who was about to get into the passer and sack Kyler, because I think he got sacked 6 or 7 times.
It was definitely, from the previous games I watched, there were more instances where it was 2 guys being circled than it was just one. So that Green Bay game, it was always just one. But yeah, it was always
glad
2
we're
guys.
Teaching the Amazon AI some new levels of shitty offensive line play to take into consideration when they do the next week's game.
Yeah, so that was definitely an interesting aspect. But yeah, the studio. Because it's a bigger studio than most of the studios of its competitors. What do you think has been the key to like why this studio has just clicked?
Well, I uploaded the clip of Richard Sherman last night with Russell Wilson comments. Can we just play that? Because I think it's a good example of what's working for them. All right, let's go.
And then that resurfaced clip of Malik Neighbors saying that the quarterback last year with Daniel Jones wasn't the problem. So when you look at this Russell Wilson situation, Tony, he says he's got a lot more football left in him. Okay, he's going to say all the right things. Do you think we've seen the last of Russell Wilson?
Honestly, I hope we have. And I say that because just looking at him and his career, his legacy, like you talked about, if ever there was somebody who played himself out of a Hall of Fame, it's Russell Wilson.
Really?
And I say that because look at what's happened ever since he left Seattle. When he was in Seattle, he was the man. He was making these good plays. He won a Super Bowl, went to 2 of them. But as soon as he left there, he went to Denver, signed that big old deal. They paid him $39 million to leave. He goes to Pittsburgh, plays there 1 year. He's out of there. Now he goes here and has 3 games. I just don't know if it's going to get any better. And I don't want to see him on a sideline holding a clipboard.
So you're very much under the "what have you done for me lately" thing, in taking away the first, decade of his career.
Absolutely, and I just don't think he's done himself any favor since he left Seattle, and I don't know how's it going to get better. I don't know. So
I agree. I agree. I think you got to judge his career off when the Legion of Boom was there. He had a legendary defense, an all-time defense, and how much success he had. And then without that legendary defense, the success he had. Without that legendary defense, he's been 4-11, 7-8. 0-3 to start with the Giants. He was a winning football player in Seattle, and people said, hey, winning is football player, all this good stuff, all these accolades, and now you get to go on your own and you get to prove, hey, I'm this great quarterback. I'm this guy that's going to be dominant, and it just hasn't worked out that way.
All right.
Yeah, to me, it's like you just see it with any kind of show in this space we cover. Like, it's the confidence and the chemistry that I feel like you can just see right there, where, like, I think a big part that goes underrated when you watch stuff like this, like I think Charles Barkley's a good example, where he's obviously going to freelance. He's going to go off the, the production sheet, the rundown. But he trusts that Shaq, Kenny, Ernie are going to be okay with it and let him cook. And to me, that was kind of like, that clip I think encapsulates where this show has gotten to, where they all like trust each other, and that allows you to go and make a bigger point rather than just kind of going through the motions, which is what I think you see on a lot of the NFL studio shows. Like, they're just there to fill time. There's really not a point to it. Nobody really is ready to kind of actually say anything. This one, like, I mean, that's a former teammate of Russell Wilson and a Hall of Fame tight end, both going at a player who's still playing and very famous, and it cut through.
Yeah, I think they did a really nice job, like, filling the archetypes that you look for on a studio show. Like you have, like, Tony Gonzalez, like you said, a Hall of Fame tight end. Like, you have the Hall of Fame credentials. You have the quarterback in Ryan Fitzpatrick, but he's not obviously not a Hall of Fame quarterback. But he wasn't like a Dan Orlovsky backup type. Like, he was a journeyman quarterback. You don't see he was the ultimate journeyman. Like, I would venture to guess Ryan Fitzpatrick has filled more immaculate grids than any other player in football.
Yeah.
And so I think that you bring Richard Sherman, who's like a borderline Hall of Fame player. You bring in Andrew Whitworth, who everybody says like offensive linemen are the best analysts, but nobody has really kind of cracked that code for how to make it translate to TV. I feel like they've done that with Andrew Whitworth. They all have a great chemistry. They're all recent players too. Like, they're all guys who have played within the last 10 to 15 years. So I just think when, like, you add it all up, it adds that dynamic that does give you that freedom to create moments like last night, where that's about as like viral of a moment for not like negative reasons necessarily that I can remember on a studio show. It's the closest I can remember to an NFL show cracking the code of inside the NBA.
Yeah, and they travel, which goes a long way. They're there every week. They get the interviews. All that stuff helps, obviously. I think they're experimenting more with trying to turn Fitzpatrick into kind of the mascot of the show and get him in with crowd and do some things like that, which is good. And it's clicking. I think like having the experience, having young but still experienced people with Carissa and Gonzalez really helped them too, because they could still vibe. It wasn't such a generation gap, but they also could just kind of shepherd the show along. And yeah, I think all the new guys with Fitzpatrick, Sherman, and Whitworth are, I think, kind of stepping into actually having a voice on the sport in a way that matters now, rather than just kind of trying it out.
I do think one built-in advantage they have, and they take advantage of it, so it's to their credit, is that they are the Thursday night game. And for me, like, the way the football calendar works now is I just spend all week looking forward to Thursday and looking forward to like this barrage of football through the weekend. And so I think that's an advantage, that people are really looking forward to their show. And I'm also much more apt to stay up personally on a Thursday night than I am a Sunday night. Like, by the end of Sunday night, I'm just ready to like end the football day. And by Monday, it's like that tenfold. Like, I'm just like ready to like, I'm exhausted from a weekend's worth of football. I think is a little more fresh, but they take advantage of it.
We talked about it with YouTube, right? Like, I think YouTube did too much and actually made the game feel insignificant almost, whereas Amazon immediately has clicked into a place where it, the music, the blue comes on my screen and I'm like, fuck yeah, football's here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I agree with you completely. Do you want to do their NBA now, or do you want to go to Netflix?
Yeah. So yeah, that's probably a good transition, because they are getting ready to launch their NBA coverage next month. And they have the C-level package, and it seems like they have individual talent for every game that they're going to cover this season. They just, every day there seems to be an announcement from Amazon about a new former player, a new former coach, or some sort of broadcaster joining. This week we had another slew of announcements, but I think the most noteworthy one was that Kyle Lowry is apparently still playing for the Sixers, but also going to be filling in on occasion on Amazon's coverage. It sounds like it's kind of going to be the Draymond Green type of role, where he's there when he can be, especially later in the season. But yeah, what have you made of these Amazon announcements?
Well, I think Lowry is somebody who we've talked about it when the musical chairs began, but then he signed a contract, so you would have thought it was over. I think, again, I think that's why I am so ready to believe in the NBA is because of everything we just talked about with the NFL, because they made smart bets on younger broadcasters. That's clearly the plan with the NBA side. There's Kevin Harlan's here, Stan Van Gundy's here, etc. That's some of the, Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit thing in the booth, but in the studio, they've definitely gone younger. Steve Nash, Candace Parker, there's others down the line. And I actually, coincidentally, I'm supposed to be talking to them about some of the NBA AI stuff that they're doing next week. Randomly, again, when we decided to talk about this, I didn't realize it was going to intersect so much, but they have big plans on that side of it too. So I think it's a little strange how many people they're bringing in. They hired Swin Cash, who just got fired from the Pelicans, to be a front office analyst. They have this weird hybrid role, it seems, where people are going to do studio and games. People are going to do studio or WNBA and NBA in the case of Candace Parker. I don't love that from the standpoint of what we were just talking about with Thursday Night Football, where the game comes on. I know the NFL is different with its schedule, of course, but I know what I'm getting with Thursday Night Football. I think they could suffer if it's who's calling the game, who even works for Amazon, why haven't I seen them in 3 months? Like, that can work against you. I'm a little nervous on that. But in general, the vision seems pretty similar to what they've done with the NFL. So I feel like I can only be excited if I'm singing the praises of that side of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, they have like weekly doubleheaders. And so there is a need for talent because you're covering 2 games a night. But at the same time, like, just looking at their schedule here, like they typically have one night a week. Like, it's a very small package compared to what NBC and obviously what ESPN have. I mean, that's not only, the big names. Obviously we know about Blake Griffin and Taylor Rooks, and you mentioned Steve Nash. Like, they're bringing in all these big names, but they're also bringing local guys. Dirk. They're bringing in a lot of local guys too from local broadcasts. I just saw a big feature with Allie Clifton, who I know is going to be one of the sideline reporters who obviously covers the Lakers as well. And so it's just, I'm curious how this is going to fit in. It really feels like they could struggle from a lack of consistency. But I also guess that on the flip side, like, I think it probably will be judged on that studio. And it feels like they're really pushing Taylor and Dirk in that studio as like the face of their coverage. Yeah,
and I would say probably Blake Griffin more than anyone else, honestly, from the way he's been used in the commercials, the interviews he's done promoting. I mean, maybe that's just him and his PR team on his own, but he's been out there in a way that even I don't know if anyone. I mean, Carmelo Anthony works for NBC. Does anyone know that? Like, has anybody heard that since the press release went out? Like, Carmelo Anthony's way more famous, I would say, than most anybody else that's going to be doing this on a full-time basis for this new package. And yet I haven't seen him. Yeah. He has his own podcast, but so, they're definitely flooding the zone. They definitely have a lot of star power. I'm just curious, are we going to see Kyle Lowry 5 times all season? Probably, some of these local people, it might be weeks between times where they even call games. And maybe some of these guys, frankly, are only really on the roster to do like the early round playoff games when they have to do even more at the beginning. The first round is always like, when it was all on NBC and TNT, you'd be like, oh yeah, Greg Anthony works for TNT. Right. I forgot, he's doing a playoff game all of a sudden. You got to have the roster to do some of that stuff, but maybe we'll have a better idea of it once we do see week to week who's actually on the call.
Yeah. And it does seem like it's very much the same strategy in terms of more recent players. It's crazy that Blake Griffin was still out there after having retired a couple of years ago.
They got really lucky.
Yeah, same with Dirk. They're definitely leaning into newer guys and guys that the current fan base is more familiar with. So I have a lot of optimism, but also a lot of questions still just about a month out here. Let's pivot to another streamer here, Netflix. We learned earlier this week, thanks to Andrew Marchand at The Athletic, that a part of Netflix's new piece of the MLB package is going to be the standalone opening day game. They'll have that for the next 3 years, starting in 2026. It's a Yankees Giants matchup. Obviously, this fits Netflix's strategy in terms of tentpole events and eventizing its sports coverage. But I think the other part of this is this whole thing that started with ESPN opting out of its MLB deal and leaving all these rights on the table, leaving MLB to renegotiate its deals. We now know what the trade looks like. We now know what MLB wound up with. You have the opening day game on Netflix. You have the Home Run Derby on Netflix. You have Sunday Night Baseball moving to NBC, along with the wild card series that ESPN previously possessed. And then you also have a minor transaction, a 3-team trade, I guess, where NBC is also getting the Roku Sunday morning package. So we don't know the financial details of most of these deals, and that's probably not a coincidence. So it's tough to evaluate it on a whole, especially knowing how much money they lost in terms of ESPN opting out. But just in terms of a exposure standpoint and where this deal shook out, what do you how do you think MLB fared in all of this?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Outside of MLB's pocketbooks, I feel like it's kind of a win all around. If I'm being honest, like I think it's good for them to blow this out to multiple partners, because then you have multiple people, multiple companies to re-up with when the time comes. In a way, I think that could really help them when the actual full package becomes available again in a few seasons. I think starting for the 2028 or 29 season. So to me, like starting a relationship with Netflix, returning to NBC, those are good things that'll carry you forward, so you're not just reliant like they used to be, where it was just ESPN and Fox. Those were their only partners. I don't think that's really how any major media company, or sports league, I should say, is operating anymore. I think NBC is also taking over the Fridays from Apple, right? That ended up being true, right? Or no?
No, that's I think that's still out there. Nothing's really
still
settled one way or the
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so you're on Peacock, you're on NBC, you're on Netflix. I don't think, if I'm a sports league, I'm not really trying to be in bed with Apple. We'll see what that turns out to be, either the next 3 years for the remainder of this deal or even for the next one. And then the ESPN side of it is, I think it's a win for baseball to house its MLB TV for live out-of-market games on the ESPN app. That's a platform more people are going to go to than the MLB app, period, always. And from everything we've heard from Marchand and others, ESPN is expected to be very interested in bidding on the World Series and a bigger postseason package in the spirit of what they want, which is digital stuff, exclusive digital stuff, and big events. You know, big, you have to have them, sports games. And so Sunday Night Baseball just wasn't that anymore. So ESPN's strategy on it makes sense too, and it's a win for them. The part of it, though, that actually struck my attention on the Netflix side more than even the two things you said, Ben, were kind of tucked away in the reporting, but they're expected to share some of these mid-season event things that baseball's been doing too. The Negro League Tribute Game, the Speedway Classic, the Field of Dreams game, whatever else they come up with. Hopefully they do more. I think those have been really, really big for baseball. And that makes sense to me. And so when you add in the opening day primetime night game, the Home Run Derby, and one or two of those special events, now I get it. Now I get it with baseball and Netflix, because the Home Run Derby by itself, I was like, for what? Who's going to remember that? Who's going to care? That makes no sense at all. But and that kind of circles back to the Amazon thing I was saying earlier, where I feel like Amazon's identity as a streamer breaking into sports is the tech side's going to be awesome. You're going to see things you've never seen on a sports broadcast before, and that's going to integrate the personalities and the perspectives of the young talent they bring on. I expect we'll see the same with the NBA. And with Netflix, it's the events, and it always has been. And now we're seeing what that looks like with baseball, and I think it actually really, I get it. I see it. I see the vision and it's going to be a recurring thing over the whole course of the baseball calendar that I think will actually be pretty cool. And I expect that they'll do some fun stuff with how they blow it out.
Yeah, I think, from a financial perspective, MLB probably would have just preferred ESPN not opted out, obviously. But I also think it wasn't the worst card to be dealt. And I think that I think we talked about it when it first happened back in February, is if I'm Major League Baseball, it's just let's bridge the gap to 2028. Let's just figure out, let's get involved with more partners. Let's get to 2028. Let's consolidate all our rights, all our national rights, all our local rights, get them all on the same timeline. And then come 2028, you can take a very TKO type of approach where it's we do have all these pre-existing relationships now. And I also think once they got over the hard feelings, it's very clear there's still a relationship there with ESPN. They're going to be licensing the MLB.TV services to ESPN. So that's it would not be, would it shock you in the least if ESPN wound up with the World Series in 2028 when those negotiations come around?
No. And I guess I misspoke earlier. They've had three partners, ESPN, Fox, and TNT Sports. I would imagine the TNT Sports package, I overlooked them probably because it's not likely to exist in much of a form or fashion as it does right now. And so, yeah, maybe they don't get the World Series. Fox has held on to that for a very long time. But even if ESPN got an LCS series, that'd be great. I just, the days of big MLB games being on FS1 and TBS are going to be dead in the next 3 years. And so ESPN would 100% get in on that. But that speaks to it, right? Baseball needed to get off cable. They needed to figure out what the deal was going to be with some of the local stuff. And they needed to create major tentpole events that generate attention. To me, it's check, check, check. They did all three of those things. And so I think it might hurt their money situation in the short term, but it forced them to get uncomfortable and do some of the things that the smart people around the media and sports worlds have been pushing them to do for a while now. And I feel like it will look back on it as a benefit to the sport, even if, maybe the financials obviously aren't where they want them to be.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see. You still have a looming potential labor stoppage. I think the under the radar story here is these local rights. MLB thinks they're going to get them all bundled up by 2028. Man, it feels easier said than done when it comes to teams like the Yankees and the Mets and the Dodgers. I think that's the big battle that's kind of looming with all this.
When you see James Dolan on the NBA side suing or threatening to sue or writing sternly worded letters to the NBA over sharing his MSG network money for Knicks games, that's just a sign of things to come. And he went along with it, so maybe that's ultimately what happens with baseball too. But you're stepping on a lot of rich, successful owners when you do that, and they're not going to be happy about it.
Yeah, and we usually know how that goes, so it'll definitely be interesting to see. But that's going to do it for today's episode of the Play-by-Play. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe, leave a review, tell a friend, tell an enemy. We will be back with you next week, breaking down all the latest in sports media.